So as we prepare for another night of what could be more violence, I would not be shocked if it comes when the sun goes down. I want to welcome now Sheriff Mark Lamb of Pinal County, Arizona, and former Sheriff of Milwaukee County and Newsmax contributor David Clarke. Sheriff Lamb, Sheriff Clarke, great to have you both on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Glad to be here.
So, Sheriff Clarke, let me start with you. Reimagine policing, they say. What in the world is that supposed to mean?
Doesn't mean anything. Look, this is what the Democrats do in situations like this with police use of force. They demagogue the issue. Harris and Presley jumped all over this like a chicken on a June bug. You know, there's still a long way to go in this investigation, but some facts and circumstances and evidence are emerging where we can see a picture starting to develop here. I wouldn't sit here and look into this camera and say that this was a mistake if it wasn't, all right? A mistake in the legal sense. And what that means in the legal sense is it's a defense to prosecution, meaning if it negates the state of mind necessary to commit that crime, then it's a mistake and it's a defense to prosecution. This officer was in a situation that was tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. When that happens, oftentimes your cognitive thinking collapses, and so you're just reacting to circumstances. She grabbed the wrong thing, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, this was not about race, clearly listening to her audio there. Sheriff Lamb, you know, we say, I've talked to you about this, you fall back to your lowest, or you fall back to your lowest level of training, right? And so that's where you are here. And so for the left to exploit this, though, and make this about race and loot and steal and talk about no more incarceration, can I ask you, what would your community look like in Pinal County if they took all your deputies off the street and let everybody out of prison?
It'd be a disaster, just like all these other leftist cities where they've done this. The fact of the matter is, it is shameful that these politicians would take advantage of such a tragic situation. This is tragic for that young man. Even though he was wanted for aggravated robbery, they were using appropriate force. He got back in his car. Mind you, and we have to have this tough conversation. This is what we do in law enforcement. And that conversation is, and you mentioned it earlier, had he just complied, he might have gone to jail for the night, maybe a few days, but he would have been out. We would not have had this result. He put those officers in a position where they had to make a split-second decision, like Sheriff Clarke said. They made that decision. She was wrong. She made a mistake, and she's going to have to live with that. It's tragic for her as well. But the fact that these politicians would use this to divide us as a community, as Americans, is shameful. They should be bringing us together, saying, hey, this was an accident. This was clearly not based on race. And one more thing, Grant, I challenge any one of these politicians to show me the facts that support bias in law enforcement, where we make our decisions or Black people are being killed on a daily basis as they would have you believe. Show me those science facts, and then we can have a conversation. But right now, they're playing on Americans' emotion, and they're trying to divide us, and that is dangerous.
Well, Sheriff Lamb, I'll tell you, when it comes to facts, officer-involved shootings where they kill the suspect, 50% of those suspects killed are white, 25% are Black. So those facts just don't add up there. Sheriff Clarke, you and I have talked about this war on cops. I'm worried for officers and sheriff's deputies out there that they will be hesitant because they are so afraid of making a mistake and what will happen to them and their communities burn because of something like this.
And as a result, crime is up in a lot of these cities. I know it's up in Minneapolis. Homicides this year, 14 versus 8 at this time last year. That's an increase. And by the way, there was a 20-year-old Black male that was shot and killed in a shooting near a Minneapolis mall last night. No outrage, no riots. And I'll tell you right now, the people who are out there rioting and making the most noise, if Mr. Wright would have been shot in a drive-by shooting or in a drug deal gone bad, these people wouldn't have batted an eyelash about it. They wouldn't have given a damn. This is full outrage. This rioting is untenable. And at some point, because I think we're reaching a tipping point, Grant, and you know this, at some point, the cops are just going to throw their hands up. They'll stay on the job. They'll throw their hands up, and they'll look the other way on this stuff, and that's going to be bad news for America.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm seeing is when departments have leaders like you, Sheriff Clarke, and you, Sheriff Lamb, They're keeping their officers because they know they have leadership has their backs. Many of these liberal cities are losing officers. Sheriff Lamb, I just want to ask you before we go. I got word tonight that the officer that shot Jacob Blake, you may remember this case in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This was the guy with the knife. He's going around. They tase him. He gets back up. They paralyze him. That officer cleared of any wrongdoing. All the officers cleared of wrongdoing. Back on the job. Do you worry, lastly, Sheriff Lamb, now what's going to happen in Kenosha, Wisconsin, another area prime and ripe for riots?
Yeah, I do worry because you have politicians kind of basically fueling this fire for people to go out and oppose us and oppose the rule of law. We need our politicians. We need our leaders in this country. We need leaders first and foremost, courageous leaders, but we need them to start supporting the rule of law. What happens in Kenosha affects us throughout the country, in Arizona, and all over the place. And could be dangerous for all of us. I'm just appreciative that you're coming on and talking about it because we have to stand together against these things.
Well, the feeling is mutual, fellas. I'm appreciative of both of you for being strong voices for law enforcement, and it's so important at times like this. Sheriff Mark Lamb, great to see you. Sheriff David Clarke, great to see you too as well. We'll look forward to getting you both back on soon. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, man.
Welcome.
All right. So as we prepare for another night of rioting in Minneapolis, and who knows, maybe Kenosha, Wisconsin now, surrounding